So I've been going around to all the branches and doing a talk about Antarctica climate change and courage, which I would like to do for you. That's about 20 minutes. But because it's Dundee and because my work is building our turbine here, I thought you might be interested in a bit more information about the turbine. So I haven't done, this is actually partly a work presentation. I haven't done this for Greens before, but I just thought you might find it interesting. And of course it's linked to the Green New Deal and the future economy of Scotland and stuff. So I thought I would do that one first and then we'll move on to the Antarctica stuff. Or if we get hung up on this asking questions and stuff, that's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. That's what you're doing. Yeah? Okay, so this is the first presentation, which is about the Green New Deal. It's part of an extract from what I call my Green Case for Independence, which I've been going around to various yes groups and doing. Presumably you're all on board with the Green Case for Independence, so I don't need to make that case to you, but it's bits of that and bits of my work presentation. So the story starts here, that Scotland, little Scotland, has 25% of all the renewable energy in all of Europe. That's huge. Oil and gas make up less than 10% of our economy, 7% is what oil and gas makes up. So when people are like, oh, our economy is dependent on oil and gas, 7% is not insignificant, but neither is it, like 40% of our economy, which some people seem to do. But we can absolutely transition to renewable energy for ourselves. We already produce 74% of our own energy, and we can start exporting that. So 74% of Scotland's electricity needs are already met from renewable resources. So we're exploiting only a tiny fraction of what we've got available. So it doesn't take a whole lot of investment to produce all of our own energy that way and start exporting it. We talk a lot in the Greens about a just transition. So what we don't want to do is when closing down the oil and gas industry and the aviation industry and so on, is what happened to the coal mines, where they're just shut down with no thought to the future of the people who work there, the communities who depend on those businesses. It doesn't have to be like that. We know exactly how many people are employed by this industry. We know what assets this industry owns in terms of quaysides and factories and vessels and oil rigs. We can plan to decommission and repurpose those assets. It absolutely can be done. And this is an example of a company doing that. So this is Texo Group. They have just taken on £8 or £9 million contract to build our first tidal turbine. Those parts have already started arriving in the yard here, and it will keep the Port of Dundee busy for most of this year. That's one tidal turbine. Imagine if it was 10 or 50. You could keep Port of Dundee busy, you could keep Ferguson Marine busy, you could keep Bifab busy. This steel was all bought from Liberty Steel in Motherwell, and it's starting to be rolled into the cans for the hull. I'll show you that at Grey Fabrications in Fife. This is heavy industry coming back to Scotland. We can absolutely do this. And the company at Texo in the Port of Dundee have had to do a major recruitment exercise to bring the skills back to Dundee. So when shipbuilding here declined, a lot of the talented skilled workers moved away, but we need those people back now because we've got to build this stuff. And that's a very, very exciting place to be. So Dundee is absolutely on the sharp end in a good way of building this new industry. So that's a very exciting place for us all to be. This is a drone footage of our old tidal turbine. So this is a 2 megawatt tidal turbine. We had it in the water for all of 2018. And in 1 year, it produced more electricity than the entire marine renewables industry had in the previous 20 years. Now, this is my company's turbine. I am, of course, I'm not representing my company, but that's obviously where I work. But our competition did the same. Like, our competition has also demonstrated that you can generate electricity from the tide. There's nothing secret or magical about that. In fact, I think it's kind of cute now. What we need to prove is that we can generate money from the tide. That's the next big thing. So my company and our competition are all in the race to who can demonstrate that you can make money from this, because of course that's what we need to do, is commercialize this industry. So this is the tide flowing between two islands in Orkney. You can see that the sea is flowing like a river. And you can get a feel for how much energy there is in that water. When you're in a boat alongside this, the boat's engines are going full tilt just to stay in one place. That's how much energy is there. So tidal races exist all over the world, normally in between island chains, which is where, as the tide kind of comes in and comes out between the island, you get these flows. Now the tide comes in and comes out 4 times a day, every 25 hours, forever. It's not like the wind. It's there sometimes, and it's there, and it's not there other times. We always know when the tide is. And most interestingly, from an engineering point of view, is we know when the tide isn't. So the tide every month, how you have your strong tides, your spring tides, and your neap tide every month. Now during a neap tide, you're actually not generating much energy at all. So that's the time to do your maintenance. So we effectively don't have any downtime because we do our maintenance and we wouldn't be generating much energy anyway. Whereas with a wind turbine, you might schedule your maintenance months in advance, but you don't know it might be windy that day and you've lost a bunch of energy. So tidal energy has a lot of advantages. And of course, it's always that beautiful in orchestra, obviously. Never rains nothing. So that's what it looks like when it's out of the water. These are the turbine blades. The old design, the little arms sort of tucked up underneath like this and then lower the blades down into the water. That's what you were seeing. That's what it looks like. So ours is a floating technology. Obviously I work for this company, so read the bias, but here's why we think floating is better. But just so you're interested, you can chat to people about it. So the other sort of standard type of tidal turbine is based on the design of a wind turbine. You can see they look a lot like wind turbines, and you just plunk them in the bottom of the ocean. Now there's a few disadvantages to that. The main thing is that if something goes wrong on them, to get them back or to install them in the first place, you need these massive DP vessels or jack-up barges. Those cost 100 grand a day to rent. And if the weather's bad and you're waiting, you're still paying that 100 grand a day. So this is part of this commercial fight. You can definitely generate electricity with these things, absolutely. But can you generate money when if anything goes wrong, you've got to spend this kind of money to get them back out of the water? My company doesn't think so, unless this sounds like a pitch for my company. That's just the situation. Ours is on the top. Ours floats, so if something goes wrong, we drive out to it in a boat and climb inside it. So we can just fix stuff. The other advantage of ours is actually the way the tidal stream works. The more powerful tide is near the top, where ours is, rather than down below. The thing that people are always concerned about is, what about waves? Are we affected by waves? And the answer to that is yes, but so are they. The Atlantis turbine has a wave out that's the same as ours is. But in fact, because of the nature of tidal races between islands, you're never subjected to the full Atlantic swell because you're kind of necessarily in between islands. So that's how we install ours with this little multi-cat vessel. You don't have those big DP vessels, so it's much, much cheaper. And there's the guys climbing onto it to go fix things. So it's really straightforward to do. This is us surviving the storm. So for anyone who's interested in the sort of technology of this, one of the problems with wind turbines, I'll start there. One of the problems with wind turbines, as you can probably imagine, is that when there's a storm, like a hurricane level winds or stuff, your wind turbine can't break. They turn them off, but you can't break because winds can be huge or winds can be tiny. Tides aren't like that. Tides are the same. Every month you have a spring, every month you have a neap. There's no such thing as a sort of hurricane level tide. They're all very well understood and known a long time in advance. It turns out that our computer modeling, and this is backed up, so our model is the red line and the real data is the green line, so you can see it correlates really well, that storm conditions don't give us our worst loads. So what we're always worried about is how much load, how much pressure we're putting on those blades as the tidal energy comes through, as the water comes past. And the worst condition is not a storm. The worst condition is the spring tide. So every month, we are using our turbine in its worst condition. So we don't have to over-design it. Like a wind turbine, you have to design it for a hurricane, even though you might never need a hurricane. So wind turbines are massively over-designed. We only ever have to design ours to survive the spring tide, which it does every month. So we don't have to do all this sort of massive over-design. So it's just another reason why tidal energy has so much potential over wind, is because we can optimize them in that way. That's the tide coming in and out every day. That's what it looks like. That's tide coming on, we generate some energy, and off we go. So the problem with tide is that it is periodic like that. It's not on all the time, it's on and then it's off. So what you need then is either energy storage to help you bridge the gaps, or just lots and lots of tidal turbines, because the tide flows at different rates in different places around the UK, and if you had enough of them, you could mix them up. But tide and wind actually work really well together. So here's my favorite graph. This is for the Orkney grid. So one of the problems, which you may or may not be aware of, is that Orkney has a separate electrical grid from the mainland of the UK. The problem for that is a lot of the renewable energy is in Orkney, so we can't export it. So you can't develop it because there's nowhere to sell that energy to. They can't push it back to the mainland. But Orkney grid, so that's the demand on the Orkney grid. That's how much energy everyone in Orkney was using over a week period. That's the red line is the wind during that week. So you can see the wind kind of comes and goes. That's us during that week. That's how much electricity we generated. So at one point, now granted this was in the middle of the night, but at one point our one turbine was generating about a fifth, maybe a quarter of all the energy in Orkney. So it's like, it is significant. It wouldn't take too many of those to generate all the energy that Orkney needed, for example. So that's pretty cool. And that's just what it looks like when you stand on the front of it. I think again, you can see kind of the energy that's in the water as the tide comes past. So that was the last turbine that was in the water for a year. We got some grant funding from the European Union to commercialize that. So that was our demonstrator. We proved you can make electricity. Great. Now we've got to prove you can make money. So the big problem with that old one is that, as I showed you, the little arms tucked up underneath. The problem was quite a lot of gear was in under the water. So your generator and your gearbox and so on were in there. So if ever they broke, we were in the same problem as the underwater guys who couldn't get at it. So we've redesigned a new turbine. This is the turbine that I'm responsible for delivering, and it is slightly different. Now, instead of coming up underneath, these arms come out to the side. We call it the gull wing design. And that, otherwise it's similar in principle, but basically the arms come up like that, and you can get a boat to it to fix it. So that means every single part of the turbine can be fixed, which is pretty neat. So that gives us a few advantages. One is that we don't need to buy particularly high quality or special components, because if they break, we can fix them. Whereas you've got those underwater turbines, they are designed like space shuttles in that they have triple redundant systems, they have the best of everything because they cannot afford for anything to break. We don't care if it breaks, we can go fix it, so that's fine. The other thing is, this is my own personal theory. Has anyone read Antifragile? Antifragile. It was a sort of trendy economics sort of book that came out a few years ago. And it was the theory about designing systems that are anti-fragile. So an anti-fragile system is a system that when you make small amounts of damage to it, it actually gets stronger. So for example, your muscles are anti-fragile. If you do a little bit of exercise, a little bit of sort of damage to your muscles, they get stronger and stronger. A fragile thing, if you damage it, it breaks, like a glass cup, it damages, it breaks. Something that's resilient, you might try and damage it, it won't break, but neither does it improve. So there's the kind of spectrum of fragile to resilient to anti-fragile. Now I reckon that our turbine is anti-fragile because when something breaks, imagine something small breaks, a valve sticks or something, we pop the legs up, we go out, we have a look at it, but while we're in there, we might go, that hose is leaking a little bit, that's looking a little bit rusty, do you know what, I'll just swap out one of these while I'm here. And every time we go to the turbine, we learn something about it. We have the chance to prevent a more serious problem. We spot that leak, we spot that bit of rust. So we have the chance to learn and improve the turbine anytime there's a problem. So our learning curve will be sort of logarithmic, whereas the competition's turbines, and they're good turbines, I'm not really trying to diss them, but they have a mathematical problem, and that is that if their turbine works perfectly, no problems for 5 years, they still don't learn anything about it for 5 whole years, at which point we've been in and out of our turbine dozens of times, and they've done loads of improvements and learned loads of stuff. So that's my personal theory as to why this design is going to ultimately be the winner.
Could you tell us how it's held in place? So I think the so-called donuts before that were chained to the bottom, and then that was quite problematic.
It is chained to the bottom, yeah, but it's not a problem. So we have whiteboard pens, I can draw it for you. So it's moored to the bottom. So it's got 4 massive gravity anchors. They're just big clumps of old concrete chain and stuff like that. And catenary mooring. So the chains lie along the seabed for quite a long way, a couple hundred meters, and then up underneath the turbine. And the catenary mooring it allows for some amount of damping because the weight of the chains helps stabilize the whole structure. And also, as the tide moves, the turbine moves back and forth a little bit. So as the tide comes one way, the front moorings stretch out, and the back ones slack off, and so forth. So it's a catenary mooring. It's actually really straightforward. There's no technology in it. We would like to make those more technical going forward. There's some R&D projects on that. We'd like to use, say, rock anchors, but no one's ever used them for this, so there's a big R&D thing there. And have taut chains. Then you need like some sort of damping system, because that chain would have impact loads from waves and stuff, which would tear the machine apart. So we need to, so there's a whole bunch of technology around that which we could improve on, but at the moment it's just really basic. Yeah. How big is it? This is 73 meters. It's massive, so it's the size of a ship. They're big, yeah, you can get inside of it. There's like whole rooms inside it. Most of the sections are just hollowed, there's nothing in them. All the electronics is in the middle section. Yeah, you can go inside, there's like a kettle in there and a desk and stuff. It's, yeah, I don't think it is. There's guys, once you're out there for the day, you're there. I think they just pee over the side, but when they're inside, yeah. So, more? Oh yeah, sorry. So this is the new turbine in action. This shows the mooring systems actually. So this is an animation. We haven't built it yet. This is what we're going to build here in Dundee. And the first section of the turbine has just arrived here, which is the middle hull section.
Yeah.
There you go. So there's the mooring connectors going in. They obviously float in by themselves with no human aid. Right? Not really. Yeah, so it's that middle bit of the turbine has just arrived, so it's going to come in sections because it's too long to transport the whole thing by road. So it's arriving in bits. And then you push those down into the tide. So originally I was responsible for managing kind of the whole turbine. As we've gotten into the build phase, I'm responsible for building the power trains. So these pitching hubs are coming from Sweden, the power trains coming from Germany, and the components coming from all over Europe, Italy, Finland, Czech Republic, France. So that's my day job, is to get all that. Well, indeed, you've hit yes, yes, quite. So this was all funded by the European Union, and all of our part, because the whole point was to develop a European-wide supply chain.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a worry. Yeah, it's a worry. What do we do if we can't get the parts? So one of the big things, and this is speaking more generally, is that this is an industry that Scotland can really claim. The technology is Scottish technology. We have the ability to build this stuff here. We have the shipyards, we have the know-how to do this kind of heavy fabrication. But we need this sort of commercial support from governments. I mean, the Scottish government is very supportive, but the UK government isn't. And without that kind of support at the market level, what we call the energy tariffs to allow us to sell our energy, or to allow our customers to sell their energy, who are we going to sell these to? Because unless you can sell the product that they make, unless you can sell that electricity to someone, why would you buy a turbine? And there have been no major turbine installations since the tariffs were cut in 2015 by the Tory government. So that's a big thing we're campaigning for, is to put those tariffs back, because whichever country in the world first creates a market for tidal energy, that's where this industry will go. And Scotland could lose it.
Like model with the money that's poured into decommissioning costs and the development costs that the fossil fuel industries get, that model would look quite interesting.
Absolutely.
Can you just run through that tariffs argument?
Okay, so if you sell energy, say if you own a diesel power plant or a coal-fired plant or a nuclear power station, you sell your energy into the grid.
You want to sell it to the grid?
You sell it to the grid, and I think it's Ofgem. There's a sort of auction where Ofgem says, well, how much you want to, there's a kind of negotiation where and you say, oh, I'm a nuclear power station, I can sell it for cheaper than that coal guy, and the coal guy will go, yeah, but mine's safer, or, whatever it is, mine's, oh, but wind farm, mine's cleaner, so pay me more money. So everyone kind of bids for how much they want to sell it for, based on how reliable, how clean, all the different rules. So there's no one kind of price for energy. All of these are negotiated. And the idea with marine renewables is that because our industry is some way behind offshore wind, for example, we're saying we simply cannot compete. We can't, this turbine that we're about to build, we are trying to bring the cost of energy down to £200 per megawatt hour. That's the kind of thing. So wind energy, they're currently bidding, Hinkley Point's £92 per kilowatt hour, I think it is. Wind energy is currently bidding in the sort of £60 per megawatt hour, and that's way below what we can't afford to build and sell the turbines for that. But we're a young industry. Wind turbines came down that same curve. Wind turbine energy was originally quite expensive, £250 per megawatt hour, and as they built more wind turbines and the technology became mass produced and all this, the price came down. So what we're at the point of just now is demonstrating that we're coming down that curve. So the last machine was we could sell that energy for £250 per megawatt hour and still make a profit. This one will be £200, the next one will be £170, and so on. So we can demonstrate we're coming down that curve. But for the next few years, we do need those higher tariffs to be able to pay for all of our research, all of our development, all the work that we do. But it's a temporary thing. So that's what we're asking for, is those tariffs to come back, so that we can do that.
Yeah. So what about this thing that's been in the national paper for the last week or so? The new thing that the government's trying, new energy, is to try and get better energy for people who can't afford it. But if that can be taken up, and maybe some very well-meaning, wealthy people put money in towards it, would that not help push it along?
I don't know about that particular initiative, I'm afraid. But, I mean, there's lots of different options here. The problem is that energy tariffs, the grid is owned by the UK. So there isn't anything that Scotland can do about that, about the tariffs specifically, but there may be other things that Scotland can, do that. Scotland has, the Scottish government and Scottish enterprise have put a lot of money into this. They've been very supportive. So the problem for the tariffs is at a UK level. But it's also at sort of an international level, because the other countries that have good tidal resource are Canada and France. And if one of them gets their tariffs sorted out before we do, honestly, we'll go there. We have to go where we can sell these turbines to. If the Canadians are buying them, great, we'll do that. And Scotland will have lost that industry, which is a real shame.
So the one in France 40 years ago at the barrage de la Ronce, was that just an experiment to show folks? I thought that gave electricity that would have France.
And I think
40 years ago.
It still works. Yeah, tidal barrages work. The problem is that they're not cost effective, because you have to build so much sort of infrastructure to do them. The only time they're cost effective is if you were going to build that infrastructure anyway. So like if you were to nowadays build, for example, the Churchill barriers between the Orkney Islands, you'd probably integrate tidal turbines into those barriers, but you wouldn't build those just for the sake of tidal turbines. The infrastructure is just much too expensive. You can definitely generate energy that way, but it's just a really expensive way to do so. And because at the moment we're being, and I think it's quite reasonable that we're being forced to be commercial, because I think tidal turbine isn't a toy anymore. Like, it's moved out of the R&D world into the let's make money world. But we do need that subsidy just a little bit longer, because obviously making one turbine is expensive. Making 50 is a lot cheaper. I can negotiate a far better deal with my supply chain if I'm buying. So there's 2 generators, or 2 gearboxes in each. Like if I'm buying 100 gearboxes, I can get the price a lot down.
Well, it's more expensive anyway. Front-end shell tar sands are all hugely expensive.
Yeah.
Investment per barrel.
Yep.
That's what it used to be.
Well, and they're massively subsidized. Aviation pays no tax on their fuel at all. Fuel tax are hugely subsidized.
Yeah.
So the very first thing that we could do as part of any Green New Deal, nice segue there, is start removing some of those subsidies. Because I'm sure you guys hear all the time, how are you going to pay for it, how are you going to pay for it, climate change is expensive. Dealing with the effects of climate change is going to be super expensive. Look, I'm talking about repurposing all these assets, quaysides and stuff. Yeah, the truth is they're all going to be underwater in 30 years, so repurposing them is like only so much value. There's a good map online where you can see where all the water levels are in 2050 at 4 degrees of warming. 4 degrees of warming is a devastating place to get, as I'm sure you all know. Human race is on its way out if we get there, but at the rate we're going, we're going to get there. So, like in Leith, where I live, the water's up to the Leith Links, which is a park. Everything out further than that, underwater. So people who say we can't afford to tackle climate change haven't told me how they're going to afford to deal with that massive internal refugee crisis, as most of Glasgow and a good part of Edinburgh is flooded, as well as all the other coastal cities. How are they going to rehouse and move all those businesses? How are we going to build all those quaysides again and all those seawalls and stuff? It almost doesn't bear thinking about, but the costs of tackling climate change are too much. It's ridiculous. Okay, so something that the Scottish Greens are proposing, and you probably heard this in the news, there's various ones going around the place, is a Green New Deal. So the original New Deal was something that Franklin Roosevelt proposed for America in the wake of the Great Depression. Thank you. Sorry, brain wasn't going there. And however it was intended, I got into a bun fight with an economist about this not long ago, but however it was intended, it ended up restructuring Americans' economy. Because it created their rudiments of a welfare state. It really did redistribute wealth in a way that had never happened in the world before, to be perfectly honest. That was kind of a world first. And this is the kind of thing that as Greens we all know is needed. We can't carry on as we are. Neoliberal capitalism is not going to solve our problem. In fact, it hasn't even shown any interest in solving the problem. They're not even pretending they're interested in solving the problem. So we need something as radical as the New Deal. We need a Green New Deal for Scotland, which will restructure our economy. So at the moment, this is largely a sort of headline and intention. And over the course of the next year, party members, and you can get involved in this, just let me know, or let your branches know, and they can show you how to get involved. We want to, as a party, develop the details behind the Green New Deal to make it our manifesto for the 2021 Hollywood elections. So, but the basic underpinnings of it is things like regional investment banks, massive redirection of the subsidies that we currently give to oil and gas, into aviation and road building, to active travel, to public transportation, to re-insulating homes, all this sort of stuff. And a lot of this is road travel, like we talk about road not travel, this is road travel. Sweden, as of this year, all their domestic heating is zero carbon. It's been done. We have lots of examples in Europe of active travel, of car-free town centers. It's been done. Here in Dundee, we're building the world's biggest tidal turbine. Again, we're not, like, it's been done. There's nothing, it's only radical if it kind of frightens you, if you see what I mean. In the sense that people think we're dreamers. This isn't a dream. This has all been done. It's just a matter of pulling these elements together and having a real commitment to it. So that's the exciting thing that's happening with us, and hopefully you can all get involved in that.
That heating one is Sweden. It's zero carbon.
Yeah, so they've got these sort of community heating schemes and ground leaf heat pumps and stuff. Yeah, they started on this scheme several years ago, and this year it's finishing. It's astonishing. And they have, in terms of people, oh, Scotland's cold, we can't keep houses warm.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's sweet. Yeah, it's crazy. But we should have started doing this 30 years ago. Like, it's just insane to all of us that we've left it this long. I'm sure very frustrating for you guys as well. This is part of my presentation on the green case for Indy, but it's sort of relevant in the case that this is a partial, not even a complete list. You can get this off Wikipedia. This is a copy-paste job of all the powers that are not devolved to Scotland. Key ones. Power to make war. But the one particular one that I'm here to talk about is submarine cables. So here are the existing submarine cables that exist. The only ones that exist to currently export cables to export energy to Europe, or even bring energy in from Europe, are in England. These ones, these proposed or in progress, they never got built. And that doesn't even show that there's no island interconnectors between Shetland and Orkney or either of those in the mainland, even though so much renewable energy is there. So this is one of my particular bugbears about being part of the UK, is that I'll leave you to decide how much political thinking is behind the fact that they've decided, instead of investing in these links, these subsea links, which could benefit an independent Scotland, they've instead decided to build a monstrosity that is 60 points. A little bit political, maybe? Yeah. So they've decided to build a ridiculously expensive power plant instead of developing energy in Scotland. I really think that's a political decision. Like, that's a super political decision. They want to keep control of the energy. They don't want Scotland to have a really great source of money and independence and stuff. Of course they don't. Anyway, that's just me being cynical. So just to wrap this presentation up, the kind of final part of the Green New Deal and the part that I think is really close to all of our hearts is the business of our local democracy or local control of things. We all know that when people have more of a say over what happens around them, they make fairer and greener decisions. It's very easy to frack under someone else's village. Nobody wants to frack under their own. So we want to give people the power to say what happens around them. And part of that is the regional investment banks and giving power to communities to say how the land and air and sea and waterfront and woodland around them is used. Now, there have been some tiny steps in that direction, but I'm sure you were all very disappointed, as I was, when the planning bill got scuppered a few weeks ago. Andy Whiteman was devastated. There was a sort of Tory SNP stitch-up, which stopped this right of appeal. So at the moment, if a developer wants to build something, they can put in an application, the community can complain, and the developer can then appeal. There's no right for the community to appeal. So the developer has far more power than the communities do. And in our opinion, and in Andy Whiteman's opinion, as a green opinion, that's wrong. Communities should have more say than developers do. But money shouldn't be allowed to talk in that way. It should be more about how people see their community. So this is the kind of other plank of the Green New Deal agenda, is really getting that genuine power out there in the community so that you guys can say how your town is developed and village is developed and stuff. It's not some developer coming in and going, nope, I'm going to knock down those trees and build those flats, or I'm going to build that power plant, or whatever it is.
That's a little bit what's built into as conditions of the planning permission, doesn't it? Because if it was steered towards more zero carbon housing, then there might be an argument for saying, okay, let's just feel good kind of thing.
There might be, yeah. So I assume different councils have different frameworks for that. I was talking to my good pal Claire Miller in Edinburgh, who's one of our councillors there. The framework for planning in Edinburgh does not have a box tick for zero carbon. So Claire and the other Greens can go, that building is not zero carbon, it's got so much of a zero carbon footprint, and it doesn't matter, because that is not grounds for canceling the plan. But maybe other towns and other councils have that in, or hopefully they're getting it.
Just intentions.
Yeah. Cool. So that's the end of the first presentation. I don't know how we're doing on time. We can rattle on to the less business-like and maybe slightly more
We've
fun.
been over the years,